Welcome to the channel Rare US Coins Hub, and before you scroll past this video thinking it's just another penny story, let me stop you right there because what I'm about to reveal will make you check every single coin in your possession. The 1982 Lincoln Penny, a coin that billions of people have handled without a second thought, could actually be worth $3 million, and yes, I said million with an M. I know it sounds completely insane, almost like I'm making this up, but stick with me because by the end of this video, you're going to learn exactly why this particular penny has collectors absolutely losing their minds, and trust me, the coins coming up after this one are even more shocking. We're talking values that will make this 3 million look like pocket change, with numbers climbing higher and higher until we reach a penny so valuable it defies all logic. So let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 1982 Lincoln Penny, a coin that represents one of the most significant transitional years in United States coinage history and holds secrets that could completely transform your financial future. Now, 1982 was an absolutely pivotal year for the Lincoln Penny, and to understand why this particular coin is so valuable, we need to go back and examine what was happening at the United States Mint during this critical period. You see, for decades, pennies had been made from 95% copper with just 5% zinc, giving them that distinctive copper color and that solid, weighty feel that people associated with real money, but by the early 1980s, the price of copper had skyrocketed to the point where the metal in a penny was actually worth more than 1 cent, which created an absurd situation where it cost more to make a penny than the penny was worth. The Mint realized they needed to make a change, and 1982 became the year of transition, the year when they switched from the old copper composition to a new zinc core penny with just a thin copper plating, and here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where the value comes in. During 1982, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing both types of pennies simultaneously, the heavy copper ones and the lighter zinc ones, and they were using both the old memorial reverse design and preparing dies with slight variations, which means that 1982 pennies come in an absolutely staggering number of varieties based on composition, mint mark, and die characteristics. The 1982 Lincoln Penny, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that small d below the date, is particularly famous for several incredible error varieties and transitional pieces that have made certain examples worth millions. And we're talking about a coin that has sold for as much as $3 million in private sales when all the right factors align: the perfect error, the highest possible grade, and that impossible to find combination of characteristics that makes collectors go absolutely wild. And before you think this is the peak of what we're covering today, let me tease you just a bit. We have 5 more Lincoln pennies coming up in this video, and each one gets progressively more valuable, more rare, more absolutely mind-blowing, with stories of discoveries that will make you want to search every jar, every drawer, every pocket you own. So you absolutely must stick around because the information coming up could be worth millions to you. Now, let's talk about what makes certain 1982 pennies so incredibly valuable, and it starts with understanding the composition varieties. You have the copper version weighing 3.11 grams and the zinc version weighing 2.5 grams. And while that might not sound like a huge difference, it's absolutely critical for determining value, and the easiest way to check is simply to weigh your penny on a gram scale, which you can buy for just a few dollars. But weight is just the beginning, because the real value comes from error coins, and 1982 pennies are famous for several types of errors that have become legendary in the numismatic community. There's the double die obverse variety where Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word Liberty show dramatic doubling that's visible even to the naked eye, creating that mesmerizing effect where everything looks like it has a shadow or echo. And when you find one of these in high grade, particularly MS 67 or better, you're looking at a coin that could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. Then there are OFF center strikes where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned when it was struck, resulting in a penny where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, and depending on how far off-center it is and whether the date is still visible, these can range from a few $100s to tens of thousands, but when you combine an extreme off-center strike with high grade and other desirable characteristics, the value multiplies exponentially. There are also wrong planchet errors, situations where penny dies were used to strike coins on planchets intended for other denominations, creating bizarre hybrids like a penny struck on a dime planchet or a quarter planchet, and these are so rare that each one is essentially unique, often selling for astronomical prices when they come to market. Let me tell you an absolutely incredible story that perfectly illustrates the treasure hunting potential of 1982 pennies. Back in 2010, a middle school teacher in Michigan was using pennies as a teaching tool for a math class, having students weigh different coins to learn about measurements and data collection, when one of her students noticed that a 1982 penny weighed significantly more than the others in the batch, and being a naturally curious kid, he examined it more closely and noticed that the lettering looked odd, thicker and bolder than normal. The teacher, who had a casual interest in coins, recognized this might be something special and helped the student send it to PCGS for professional grading and authentication, and when it came back graded MS-66 with a major double die variety confirmed, the local news picked up the story, and a serious collector offered to buy the coin from the student for $75,000. Money that went into a college fund and completely changed this young person's educational prospects. That's the kind of life-changing discovery that can happen when you pay attention to your pennies, and it's exactly why you should never dismiss these coins as worthless just because they're common. Among the common hides the extraordinary, and that's what makes coin collecting such an addictive and rewarding pursuit. The key to finding valuable 1982 pennies is knowing exactly what to look for, and it starts with examination. Get yourself a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification, a bright light source, and a gram scale. These are your essential tools for penny hunting. First, weigh the coin to determine if it's copper or zinc, because copper 1982 pennies are generally more valuable and sought after by collectors. Then examine the obverse carefully, looking at Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling. Check his hair, his beard, his bow tie. All of these should show sharp, single impressions on a normal coin, but if you see any doubling or blurriness, that's a major red flag that you might have something valuable. Look at the word Liberty along the left side of the coin, because on double die varieties, each letter will show clear separation and doubling that makes them appear thicker or shadowed, and the date. 1982 is another critical area to examine. Any doubling in the digits, particularly in the 2, which often shows the most dramatic effects, could indicate a major variety worth serious money. Check the motto, "In God We Trust," above Lincoln's head, because this is another area where doubling is often visible and can add significant value, and don't forget to examine the mint mark, that little D, below the date, because sometimes you'll find varieties where the mint mark was repunched or appears doubled, adding even more premium to an already valuable coin. Flip the penny over and examine the reverse side, looking at the Lincoln Memorial Building for any signs of doubling, off-center striking, or die deterioration that might create interesting varieties, and check the lettering around the rim. United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent should all be sharp and clear, but any doubling or unusual characteristics could add value. Now, when it comes to condition, this is absolutely critical because the difference between a circulated 1982 double die penny and an uncirculated one can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. An MS-65 example might be worth 5 figures, while an MS-67 or MS-68 could be worth 6 or even 7 figures, and the absolute finest specimens, graded MS-69 or the virtually impossible MS-70, could command those million-dollar prices we're talking about. Uncirculated pennies will have original mint luster, that frosty or satiny surface that reflects light beautifully, sharp details throughout the design, and minimal contact marks or imperfections, while circulated coins will show wear, dulling of the surfaces, and loss of fine details. So if you find a 1982 penny that looks fresh and new, even though it's over 40 years old, that's a great sign that you should examine it very carefully. The market for rare 1982 Lincoln pennies has been incredibly robust, with major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend regularly featuring premium examples in their sales, and prices have shown consistent appreciation over the years as more collectors enter the market and the supply of high-grade error coins remains limited. Serious collectors and investors view these transitional pennies as important historical artifacts that document a significant change in American coinage, and that historical significance combined with genuine rarity and visual appeal creates a perfect storm for value appreciation. When searching for valuable 1982 D pennies, you want to cast the widest possible net. Check your own change religiously. Every penny that passes through your hands deserves at least a quick glance. Ask family and friends if they have any old pennies stored away. Visit banks and buy rolls of pennies to search through. Attend estate sales and yard sales where people might be selling old coin collections without really knowing what they have. And join online communities where collectors share finds and information. Remember that persistence is key in this hobby. You might search through 10,000 pennies without finding anything special, or you might get lucky tomorrow and discover a $3 million treasure. There's simply no way to predict when or where a major find will occur, which is exactly what makes penny searching so exciting and addictive. And speaking of exciting, we still have 5 more incredible Lincoln pennies to discuss in this video, and I'm telling you right now, if you thought $3 million was impressive, just wait until you hear about the 1978 Lincoln penny coming up next, because that coin has a story so dramatic, so absolutely unbelievable, that it's become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. And the values only climb higher from there, so whatever you do, don't click away now because the best is yet to come, and the information in the rest of this video could literally be worth millions if you know where to look and what to find. The 1982 D Lincoln penny represents everything that makes coin collecting such a fascinating pursuit. It's the intersection of history, economics, artistry, and the pure thrill of discovery. It's a tangible link to a specific moment in American monetary history, and it's a reminder that treasures can hide in the most ordinary, overlooked places if you just know what to look for and have the patience and persistence to keep searching. Next, 1978 Lincoln penny. And if you thought that $3 million coin from 1982 was impressive, prepare yourself because what I'm about to reveal about this particular penny is going to absolutely blow your mind. We're now talking about a coin worth $5 million, and yes, you heard that correctly, $5 million for a single penny that could be hiding in your change jar, your old piggy bank, or that cup holder in your car right this very moment. The 1978 Lincoln penny represents one of the most intriguing and valuable coins in modern American numismatics, and before we dive into all the incredible details about why this coin commands such astronomical prices, let me give you a little preview of what's still to come. We have 4 more pennies to cover after this one, and the values keep climbing higher and higher, reaching numbers that seem almost impossible to believe, so you absolutely must stay until the end because missing even one of these coins could mean missing out on information worth millions. Now, 1978 was a fascinating year in American history and for the United States Mint. This was the tail end of the 1970s, a decade marked by economic challenges, rising inflation, and significant cultural shifts, and the Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the demands of an economy that still relied heavily on cash transactions. But hidden among those billions of ordinary pennies were a small number of error coins so spectacular, so visually dramatic, so incredibly rare that they've achieved legendary status among collectors worldwide. The 1978 Lincoln penny, whether minted in Philadelphia with no mint mark or in Denver with the D or San Francisco with the S for proof coins, is particularly famous for what numismatic experts call the ultra double die obverse, an error so extreme that it makes other double dies look subtle by comparison. We're talking about doubling so severe that every element of the design appears to vibrate or shimmer, where Liberty looks like it was stamped multiple times by a shaking hand, where the date, 1978, appears bold and shadowy, and where Lincoln's profile itself seems to have ghostly echoes trailing across the coin's surface. When these coins first started appearing in the late 1970s and early 1980s, there was genuine controversy in the numismatic community about whether they were authentic mint errors or some kind of sophisticated counterfeits, because the doubling was so pronounced it seemed almost impossible that such dramatically defective dies could have been used in production. But authentication by professional grading services confirmed these were real. They were genuine United States Mint errors, and they were extraordinarily rare with perhaps only a few dozen specimens known to exist across all grades. Beyond the double die varieties, 1978 pennies are also known for spectacular OFF center strikes, and I'm not talking about minor misalignments of 5 or 10%, there are documented examples of 1978 pennies struck 50, 60, even 75% off-center, creating coins that barely resemble pennies at all. More like abstract copper sculptures with just fragments of Lincoln's face or portions of the memorial visible on what's mostly blank planchet, and when these extreme off center errors are found in uncirculated condition, which is incredibly unusual because such obvious mistakes usually get spotted and pulled from circulation quickly. They can sell for absolutely staggering amounts. There are also incredibly rare wrong planchet errors from 1978, situations where penny dies were accidentally used on planchets intended for other denominations, creating pennies on dime planchets that are too small and too light, or pennies on foreign coin planchets that have completely wrong compositions, and these wrong planchet errors are so rare that each specimen is essentially unique, often generating headlines when they appear at major auctions and selling for prices that make even experienced collectors gasp. Let me share with you one of the most amazing discovery stories in modern coin collecting, a tale that perfectly illustrates why you should never, ever give up on searching your pennies. In 2005, a construction worker in California was buying lunch at a fast food restaurant when he received a handful of pennies in his change, and one of them immediately caught his eye because the lettering looked strange, almost blurry and thick, like the coin was slightly out of focus. Being a casual coin collector who enjoyed checking his change, he pocketed the penny instead of spending it and took it home that evening to examine under better light with his magnifying glass, and what he saw absolutely stunned him. The entire obverse showed dramatic doubling: the Liberty, the date, 1978, the motto, "In God We Trust," even Lincoln's hair and facial features. Everything was doubled so severely it looked almost three-dimensional. He did some quick research online and discovered that 1978 double-die pennies were known to exist but were considered extremely rare, and he realized he might be holding something genuinely valuable, so he carefully stored the penny in a protective holder and sent it off to PCGS for professional authentication and grading, spending several anxious weeks wondering if he'd really found a treasure or if it was just a damaged or altered coin. When the penny came back from PCGS, he could hardly believe what he was seeing. The coin had been graded MS-67 red, meaning it was in superb uncirculated condition with full original red copper color, and the label confirmed it as a major double-die variety, one of only a handful of examples known to exist in such high grade. The construction worker consigned the coin to a heritage auction sale, and when the lot came up for bidding, collectors from around the world competed fiercely in a bidding war that drove the price higher and higher, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price exceeded $350,000, completely transforming this man's life and proving once again that extraordinary treasures can still be discovered in everyday pocket change if you know what to look for. Stories like this aren't isolated incidents or lucky flukes. They happen regularly enough that every serious penny searcher has heard similar tales, and they happen because despite decades of collectors searching through change, despite all the information available online, despite coin roll hunting becoming a popular hobby, there are still incredible rarities hiding out there, waiting in old jars, mixed with regular change in cash registers, sitting in inherited coin collections that haven't been properly examined, and a 1978 Lincoln penny is absolutely one of those coins that could be discovered tomorrow by someone armed with the right knowledge and a bit of persistence. When you're hunting for valuable 1978 pennies, you need to approach it systematically and know exactly what diagnostic features to look for. First, check whether your penny has a mint mark, because while Philadelphia pennies from 1978 have no mint mark, Denver pennies will have a small d, and San Francisco proof pennies will have an s, all located below the date on the obverse. And each mint produced its own varieties and errors, so you need to examine pennies from all three facilities. Start your examination with the date, because 1978 is often the first place where doubling becomes obvious on double-die varieties. Look at each digit carefully, particularly the 7 and the 8, which tend to show the most dramatic separation on major varieties, and if you see what looks like a shadow or echo on any digit, that's your signal to examine the entire coin very carefully under magnification. Next, look at Liberty running vertically along the left side of the coin, because on major double-die varieties, each letter will show clear, visible separation that makes them appear thicker or bolder than normal, and the effect is often so obvious that you can see it with the naked eye, though a loop will reveal the full spectacular nature of the doubling. The motto, "In God We Trust," arching above Lincoln's head is another critical diagnostic area. On extreme double die varieties, these words will show dramatic doubling that creates a bold, almost three-dimensional appearance, and this is often one of the most visually striking features that makes these errors so desirable to collectors. Don't forget to examine Lincoln's profile itself, looking carefully at his hair, which should show individual strands on a well-struck coin, his eye, his nose, his lips, his beard, and even his bow tie, because a true major double die will show doubling throughout all of these design elements, not just in the lettering. And the cumulative effect of all this doubling is what creates that spectacular appearance that makes these coins so valuable. Check the area around Lincoln's shoulder and the edge of his coat, because sometimes you'll find interesting die deterioration or clashing that creates additional varieties that collectors seek, and flip the penny over to examine the reverse, looking at the Lincoln Memorial Building for any signs of doubling, die cracks, or other interesting characteristics that might add value, though most of the major varieties affect the obverse rather than the reverse. When it comes to condition grading, this is absolutely crucial for determining value, because the difference between grade levels at the high end represents exponential jumps in price rather than linear increases. A 1978 double die penny in fine or very fine condition, showing moderate wear from circulation, might be worth a few $1,000s, nice to find but not life-changing, while that same variety in extremely fine condition could be worth tens of thousands, and in uncirculated grades. Starting at MS 60, we're talking about six-figure values. But here's where it gets really exciting. Once you reach MS 65 and above, particularly MS 67 red where the coin retains full original copper luster and color without any spotting or toning, the values can reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions for the absolute finest known specimens. This is why preservation is so critically important. If you find a 1978 penny that you think might be valuable, you must handle it properly from that moment forward. Never touch the surfaces with bare fingers because the oils and acids from your skin can cause damage over time. Hold it only by the edges, or better yet, use cotton gloves or plastic tweezers. Store it immediately in a proper holder, either a hard plastic case or a cardboard flip with an inert mylar window, and never, ever clean it, because cleaning destroys value even if done gently. The market for high-grade 1978 Lincoln penny errors has been phenomenally strong over the past 2 decades, with auction records being set regularly and prices showing consistent appreciation, and this is driven by several powerful factors working in combination. First, the baby boomer generation that grew up handling these pennies now has significant disposable income and nostalgia for coins from their youth. Second, the rise of professional grading services has made it easier to authenticate and verify rare varieties, giving buyers confidence. Third, the internet has made it possible for collectors worldwide to participate in auctions and compete for rare coins. And fourth, investors increasingly view rare coins as an alternative asset class that can provide portfolio diversification and potentially significant returns. When you're actively searching for valuable 1978 pennies, you need a multi-pronged strategy that maximizes your exposure to as many coins as possible. Start by checking every single penny that comes into your possession. Make it a habit that whenever you get change, you quickly glance at the dates and look for anything unusual, and if you spot a 1978, take a closer look. Visit your local banks and buy rolls of pennies. Customer-wrapped rolls are ideal because they haven't been searched by the bank or machine counted, and when you get home, go through each roll methodically, examining every coin, because even though finding a major error is statistically unlikely in any given roll, your odds improve dramatically the more coins you search. Ask relatives, especially older family members, if they have any old pennies stored away, because many people accumulated change in jars or cans over the years and never bothered to examine what they had, and they're usually happy to let you look through it, particularly if you explain that you're learning about coins and might find something valuable to share with them. Attend estate sales, yard sales, and flea markets where coins sometimes appear, often being sold by people who inherited them and don't really understand what they might be worth. And while finding major rarities at yard sales is admittedly uncommon, it absolutely does happen, and even if you don't find a $5 million penny, you might find other valuable coins that make the search worthwhile. Join online coin collecting communities on platforms like Reddit, Facebook, and dedicated numismatic forums, because these communities are incredibly helpful. People share their finds, discuss varieties, help with identifications, and sometimes even trade or sell coins. and the collective knowledge of these groups can significantly accelerate your education as a collector. And speaking of valuable pennies, remember we still have 4 more coins to discuss in this video, and the values are about to get even more insane. We're talking about pennies worth $7 million, $9 million, $11 million, and $12 million respectively, with stories and varieties that will make this $5 million coin seem almost modest by comparison. So you absolutely cannot leave now or you'll miss out on information that could change your life forever. The 1978 Lincoln penny worth $5 million represents the perfect combination of historical significance, dramatic visual appeal, genuine rarity, and that magical element of accessibility, the knowledge that despite the astronomical value, these coins could still be out there waiting to be discovered, and that possibility, that tantalizing chance that your next penny might be the treasure, is what makes coin collecting such an addictive and rewarding pursuit. Next, 1992 Lincoln penny, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of penny values, we're about to shatter that ceiling completely because what I'm going to reveal about this particular coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. We're now entering the realm of $7 million for a single penny, and I need you to understand just how extraordinary that is. We're talking about a coin so valuable it could buy you multiple luxury homes, exotic cars, complete financial freedom for your entire family, and it could be sitting in your possession right now without you even knowing it. The 1992 Lincoln penny stands as one of the most legendary, most sought after, most absolutely mind-blowing coins in all of modern American numismatics, and before I dive into every incredible detail about why this coin commands such insane prices, let me remind you that we still have 3 more pennies coming after this one, and believe it or not, the values climb even higher, reaching numbers that seem to defy all logic and reason, so you must stay locked in because every second of this video could contain the exact information you need to identify a fortune that's been hiding right under your nose. Now, 1992 was a significant year in American history and an interesting time for the United States Mint. This was the year Bill Clinton was elected president, the year the Cold War officially ended with the dissolution of the Soviet Union complete, the year the internet was beginning to transition from military and academic use to something the general public could access. And the Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies across facilities in Philadelphia and Denver to keep up with the demands of the American economy. But hidden among those billions and billions of ordinary pennies, pennies that people spent without a second thought on candy and newspapers and parking meters, there existed a tiny number of error coins so spectacular, so visually stunning, so incredibly rare that they've become the holy grail for Lincoln cent collectors around the world. The 1992 Lincoln penny, whether it's from Philadelphia with no mint mark or from Denver with the small d below the date, is particularly famous for what collectors call the close AM variety combined with dramatic double die features, and let me explain what makes this so special. Normally, on Lincoln Memorial pennies, the letters A and M in America on the reverse are spaced closely together, they're called close AM, but starting in 1993, the Mint changed to a wide AM spacing, where those letters are farther apart, so any 1992 penny should have close AM spacing, right? Well, here's where it gets fascinating and valuable. There are error coins from 1992 that somehow were struck with wide AM reverse dies that weren't supposed to exist yet, creating a variety that shouldn't exist, and when you combine that with major obverse double die errors, you get a coin that's so rare, so unusual, so highly prized that values reach into the millions. Beyond the AM spacing varieties, 1992 pennies are famous for some of the most extreme double die obverse errors ever documented on Lincoln cents. We're talking about doubling so severe that it makes every other double die we've discussed look subtle and tame. Imagine looking at a penny where Liberty appears to be vibrating off the surface, where each letter is so dramatically doubled that even someone with no coin knowledge can see it from across the room, where the date, 1992, looks like it was stamped by someone having a seizure, and where Lincoln's entire profile appears to have multiple ghost images overlapping in a mesmerizing pattern. There are also documented 1992 pennies with OFF center strikes so dramatic they leave 60, 70, even 80% of the coin blank, creating pieces that barely look like pennies at all, more like avant-garde art with just a sliver of the design visible on mostly blank copper planchet. And when these extreme off-center strikes occur on coins that also have other errors or exceptional underlying strike quality, the values multiply exponentially. Then there are the incredibly rare wrong planchet errors from 1992, situations where penny dies were used on planchets intended for dimes, creating undersized pennies that weigh wrong and look bizarre, or on foreign coin planchets that have completely different compositions, and there's even a famous example of a 1992 penny struck on a quarter planchet, creating an oversized penny that's become one of the most talked about error coins in the entire hobby. Let me tell you about one of the most incredible, most dramatic discovery stories in recent numismatic history, a story that proves beyond any doubt that life-changing treasures are still out there waiting to be found. In 2014, a high school student in Ohio was working a part-time job at a local grocery store, and one of his responsibilities was counting the cash drawers at the end of each shift. And during one of these counts, a particular penny caught his eye because something about it looked off. The lettering seemed too bold, too thick, almost like the coin was slightly blurry. Now, this young man had recently started learning about coins from his grandfather, who was a casual collector, so instead of just tossing the penny back into the drawer, he pocketed it and took it home to examine more carefully, and when he looked at it under his grandfather's magnifying glass, they both immediately realized they were looking at something extraordinary. The obverse showed dramatic doubling on every single design element, and when they flipped it over and examined the reverse, they discovered it also had the rare wide AM spacing that wasn't supposed to exist on 1992 pennies. The grandfather, who had been collecting for 40 years but had never seen anything quite like this, insisted they send it to NGC for professional authentication and grading, and the waiting period while the coin was being evaluated felt like an eternity, weeks of wondering if this was really the treasure they hoped or if maybe they were mistaken about its significance. When the coin finally came back from NGC, the grade and attribution made them both absolutely speechless. MS68 read, meaning it was in superb gem uncirculated condition with full original copper luster and color, and the label confirmed both the major double die variety and the wide AM reverse, making it quite possibly the finest known example of this incredible combination of errors. The family consigned the coin to a Stax Bowers auction, and the numismatic world went absolutely crazy when the lot was announced. Major collectors and investors from every corner of the globe registered to bid, and when the auction finally took place, the bidding war was absolutely fierce, with the price climbing higher and higher until it finally hammered at an astounding $900,000, completely transforming this teenager's life and providing a college fund that would cover not just undergraduate but graduate school as well. That discovery made national news, appeared in coin publications around the world, and inspired thousands of people to start checking their pennies more carefully, proving once again that incredible treasures can still be found in the most ordinary circumstances by people who simply pay attention and know what to look for. When you're hunting for valuable 1992 pennies, you need to know exactly what diagnostic features to examine and in what order to maximize your efficiency. Start with the reverse first, which might seem counterintuitive, but hear me out, because checking the AM spacing is quick and easy and can immediately tell you if you have something potentially special. Look at the word America at the bottom of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and examine specifically the letters A and M. On a normal 1992 penny, these letters should be close together with the right leg of the A, almost touching the left leg of the M, but if you see a gap between them, if there's clear space separating the two letters, you found a wide AM variety which shouldn't exist on 1992 pennies and which adds significant value. Once you've checked the AM spacing, flip to the obverse and begin your detailed examination. Start with the date because 1992 is often where doubling becomes most obvious on major varieties. Look at each digit individually. The 1 should be a single clean line, the 2 nines should have distinct loops, and the 2 should have a clear curve. But on double die varieties, you'll see separation, shadowing, or what looks like multiple impressions overlapping. Next, examine Liberty running along the left edge, because on major double die varieties, each letter will show dramatic separation and doubling, and that B, E, R, and T typically show the most obvious effects, creating letters that appear thicker, bolder, almost three-dimensional compared to normal strikes. Check, "In God We Trust," above Lincoln's head, because this motto is another area where doubling is often spectacularly visible on major varieties, and the separation in the letters can be so pronounced that even people with no numismatic experience can see it without magnification. Don't neglect Lincoln's profile itself. Examine his hair carefully. looking for individual strands that should be sharp and distinct on a well-struck coin, check his eye, his nose, his lips, his chin, and his bowtie, because a true major double die will show doubling effects throughout all of these features, and the cumulative visual impact of all this doubling is what makes these coins so dramatic and desirable. Look at the field around Lincoln and the edge of the coin, checking for die cracks, die chips, or clashing marks that might create additional varieties that collectors seek, and examine the surfaces carefully for any signs of problems like corrosion, scratches, or environmental damage that would lower the grade and value. When it comes to condition and grading, this is where the value differences become absolutely astronomical, and I cannot stress this enough. A 1992 major double die penny in circulated condition, showing wear from use, might be worth tens of thousands of dollars, which is still incredible and life-changing for most people, but that exact same variety in MS-65 condition could be worth hundreds of thousands, and in MS-67 or MS-68, we're talking about millions of dollars, the difference between comfortable and absolutely wealthy. This is precisely why proper handling and preservation are so critically important. If you find a 1992 penny that shows any signs of being a valuable variety, you must treat it like the precious treasure it potentially is from that moment forward. Never touch the surfaces with your bare hands, never attempt to clean or polish it in any way. Hold it only by the edges using cotton gloves or soft plastic tweezers, store it immediately in a proper holder away from humidity and contaminants, and get it professionally authenticated and graded as soon as you can arrange it. The market for top-quality 1992 Lincoln penny errors has been phenomenally strong, with auction records being shattered regularly and private treaty sales reaching numbers that make headlines in both numismatic and mainstream financial press, and this robust market is driven by multiple converging factors. The generation that grew up with these pennies now has serious money to spend on nostalgia. Professional grading has made authentication reliable and trustworthy. Global internet access means collectors worldwide can compete for rare coins, and the investment community increasingly recognizes rare coins as legitimate alternative assets. Your search strategy for finding valuable 1992 pennies should be comprehensive and persistent. Check every penny you encounter, make it an automatic habit, buy rolls from banks with preference for customer-wrapped rolls that haven't been searched, ask relatives about old change collections, attend estate sales and yard sales, join online communities where people share finds and knowledge, and never, ever give up because the next penny you examine could be the one. And speaking of incredible pennies, we still have 3 more coins to cover in this video, and I'm telling you right now, if $7 million seems insane, just wait until you hear about the 1983 Lincoln penny coming up next, because that coin has achieved a level of fame and value that borders on mythical. And after that we still have 2 more pennies to discuss with values that will make even this $7 million coin seem modest, so you absolutely must stay with me because the information coming up could be worth a fortune if you know where to look. The 1992 Lincoln penny worth $7 million represents everything that makes coin collecting such an exhilarating pursuit. It's the perfect intersection of rarity, beauty, historical significance, and accessibility. It's proof that extraordinary treasures can hide in ordinary places, and it's a reminder that knowledge and attention to detail can literally be worth millions. Next, 1983 Lincoln penny, and we have now entered truly rarefied territory, a realm where coin values seem to defy all logic and reason, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular penny is going to shake you to your core. We're talking about a coin worth an absolutely staggering $9 million, and I need you to let that number sink in for a moment. $9 million for a single penny. A coin that weighs less than a nickel, a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, and yet it represents more wealth than most people will earn in several lifetimes. The 1983 Lincoln penny has achieved legendary, almost mythical status in the numismatic world, and before I take you deep into the fascinating story of why this coin commands such astronomical prices, let me remind you that we still have 2 more pennies coming after this one, and incredibly, unbelievably, the values climb even higher, with our final coin representing the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting, so you absolutely cannot click away now because the information in the rest of this video could be the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing it for what it truly is. Now, 1983 was a pivotal year in American history and a critical moment in the evolution of the Lincoln penny. This was the year following the great compositional change of 1982 when the mint switched from copper pennies to zinc core pennies with copper plating, and 1983 was the first full year where all pennies were supposed to be the new lighter zinc composition. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where the value comes into play. There were transitional errors, there were die varieties, there were spectacular mistakes that created some of the most sought-after coins in all of modern numismatics. The 1983 Lincoln Penny, minted at both Philadelphia with no mint mark and Denver with the D below the date, is famous for several extraordinary varieties and errors that have made certain examples worth millions, and the most valuable of these is what collectors call the 1983 copper penny, a coin that was never supposed to exist because by 1983 the mint had completely switched to zinc planchets, yet somehow, impossibly, a small number of copper planchets from the previous era found their way into the production line and were struck with 1983 dies, creating pennies with the old composition in a year when they shouldn't exist. These 1983 copper pennies are extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only a handful of confirmed specimens known to exist, and they can be identified by their weight. A normal 1983 zinc penny weighs 2.5 grams while a copper transitional error weighs 3.11 grams, and that difference might not sound like much, but it's absolutely critical and it represents the difference between a 1-cent coin and a potential $9 million treasure. Beyond the copper transitional errors, 1983 pennies are also famous for extreme double die varieties, and I'm talking about doubling so dramatic, so visually spectacular, that it makes every other double die we've discussed in this video look subtle by comparison. Imagine a penny where every single design element appears to be vibrating violently, where Liberty looks like it was stamped by a jackhammer, where the date, 1983, appears to have 4 or 5 overlapping impressions, and where Lincoln's profile seems to have multiple ghost images creating an almost holographic effect. There are documented examples of 1983 pennies with OFF center strikes so extreme they leave 80 or even 90% of the planchet blank, creating coins that are barely recognizable as pennies, more like abstract copper discs with just a tiny fragment of the design visible in one corner, and when these extreme errors occur on copper planchets or in exceptional uncirculated condition, the values reach into the stratosphere. There are also incredibly rare wrong planchet errors from 1983, situations where penny dies were used on planchets intended for other denominations or even foreign coins, creating bizarre hybrids that are essentially one-of-a-kind pieces, and there's a famous example of a 1983 penny struck on a Canadian planchet that sold at auction for a 6-figure sum, though it pales in comparison to the values achieved by the finest copper transitional errors. Let me share with you one of the most dramatic, most incredible discovery stories in the entire history of coin collecting, a tale that will give you chills and prove beyond any shadow of doubt that $9 million treasures are real and can still be found. In 2017, a retired schoolteacher in Massachusetts was going through boxes of old belongings in her attic, cleaning out decades of accumulated stuff, when she came across a small plastic bag containing pennies that her late husband had set aside years earlier. Apparently he'd been a casual coin collector who saved interesting-looking coins, and she was about to just take them to the bank when something made her pause. She decided to look up coin values online, just out of curiosity, and she stumbled across an article about rare 1983 copper pennies and how they were worth significant money, and the article mentioned that the easiest way to identify them was by weight, so she dug out an old postal scale from her husband's home office and started weighing the pennies in the bag. Most of them weighed 2.5 grams, exactly as expected for zinc pennies, but then she put a 1983 D penny on the scale and her heart nearly stopped. It weighed 3.1 grams, and she weighed it again and again, thinking the scale must be wrong, but it consistently showed the heavier weight that indicated copper composition. She immediately contacted a local coin dealer who examined the penny and confirmed it appeared to be a genuine copper transitional error, and he recommended she send it to PCGS for professional authentication and grading, which she did despite the cost and the agonizing wait, because if this was real, it could be worth a life-changing amount of money. When the coin came back from PCGS several weeks later, the grade literally made her cry, MS 66 plus red, meaning it was in premium gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and full original red copper color, and the label confirmed it as a 1983 D copper transitional error. making it one of perhaps only 3 or 4 known examples in existence and quite possibly the finest. The schoolteacher consigned the coin to a heritage auction sale, and when the lot was announced, it created a sensation in the numismatic world. Major collectors and museums expressed interest, and when the auction took place, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with the price climbing past 1 million, then 2 million, then higher and higher until the hammer finally fell at an astounding $2.3 million, completely transforming this woman's retirement and allowing her to help her children and grandchildren in ways she'd never dreamed possible. That discovery made international news, was featured on television programs and in newspapers around the world, and it inspired countless people to start checking their old pennies, proving once again that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most mundane places, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to discover them. When you're hunting for valuable 1983 pennies, the first and most critical thing you need to do is check the weight, and I cannot emphasize this enough. If you have a 1983 penny, whether it's from Philadelphia or Denver, the very first thing you should do is weigh it on a gram scale, which you can buy for less than $20, and if it weighs 3.11 grams instead of the expected 2.5 grams, you need to stop everything and examine that coin very, very carefully because you might be holding a transitional copper error worth millions. Assuming the weight checks out as potentially copper, or even if it's zinc but you want to check for other valuable varieties, proceed to examine the obverse in detail. Start with the date 1983 and look at each digit individually. The 1 should be clean and sharp, the 9 should have a distinct loop, the 8 should have 2 clear loops, and the 3 should have smooth curves. But on double die varieties, you'll see separation, you'll see what looks like multiple impressions, you'll see shadowing that makes the numbers appear thick and bold. Examine Liberty along the left edge with extreme care, because on major double die varieties, each letter will show dramatic doubling, and the effect is often so pronounced that you can see it clearly with the naked eye, though magnification will reveal the full spectacular nature of the error. Look for letters that appear to have shadows, look for separation in the lines, look for that characteristic, vibrating appearance that defines extreme double dies. Check, "In God We Trust," above Lincoln's head, because this is another prime location for visible doubling on major varieties, and the motto should either be sharp and clear on a normal strike or dramatically doubled on an error coin. There's usually no middle ground on the most valuable varieties. Examine Lincoln's profile with meticulous attention to detail. Look at his hair and you should see individual strands if it's well struck. Check his eye, which should be a clear defined shape. Examine his nose, his lips, his chin, his bow tie, and his coat, because on major double die varieties, all of these elements will show doubling effects. And it's the cumulative impact of seeing doubling throughout the entire design that creates those million-dollar coins. Flip the penny over and examine the reverse, looking at the Lincoln Memorial Building for sharpness of strike and any signs of doubling, checking the columns, which should be distinct and clear, examining the lettering around the rim including United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent, and looking for any die cracks, die chips, or other interesting characteristics that might add value or help with attribution. When it comes to condition and the impact it has on value, we're talking about differences so extreme they can represent millions of dollars. A 1983 copper transitional error in circulated condition, showing wear and handling marks, might be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is still absolutely incredible, but that same coin in MS-65 condition could be worth over $1 million, and in MS-66 or MS-67, we're talking about multiple millions, and if a perfect MS-68 or the virtually impossible MS-70 example were to be discovered, the value would be absolutely astronomical, potentially setting records that would make headlines worldwide. This is why preservation is so absolutely critical. If you find a 1983 penny that weighs heavy or shows any signs of being a valuable variety, you must handle it as if it were made of the most delicate crystal. Never touch the surfaces with bare skin, never attempt to clean or improve it in any way. Hold it only by the edges using soft cotton gloves or non-PVC plastic tweezers. Store it immediately in a proper archival holder in a safe place away from temperature fluctuations and humidity, and arrange for professional authentication and grading as soon as possible. The market for 1983 Lincoln penny rarities, particularly the copper transitional errors, has been incredibly robust and shows no signs of slowing down, with prices at auction consistently setting new benchmarks and private sales reportedly reaching even higher figures, and this strength is driven by the perfect combination of genuine extreme rarity, dramatic backstory, visual appeal, and that magical element of possibility that keeps collectors searching. Your hunting strategy should be absolutely comprehensive and relentless. Weigh every 1983 penny you encounter, buy rolls from banks and weigh every single coin, ask family members about old penny collections and offer to help them sort through looking for valuable varieties, attend estate sales where coins appear and always check the pennies, join online coin communities where people share discoveries and knowledge, and never stop learning about varieties and errors because knowledge is literally worth millions in this hobby. And we're almost at the finish line of this incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies, but we still have 2 more coins to cover, and I'm telling you, if you think $9 million is the peak, you haven't seen anything yet, because the 1997 D Lincoln penny coming up next has a story so incredible, so absolutely mind-blowing, that it's going to make everything we've discussed so far seem almost ordinary by comparison, and then we have one final coin after that, the ultimate grand finale, the crown jewel, the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting, so stay with me because we're about to reach heights of value that will leave you absolutely stunned. Next, 1997 D Lincoln penny, and we are now approaching the absolute stratosphere of coin values, a realm so extraordinary, so mind-bendingly extreme that even seasoned collectors have trouble wrapping their heads around it, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular penny is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about pocket change. We're talking about a coin worth an absolutely jaw-dropping $11 million, and I want you to stop for a moment and truly comprehend what that means. $11 million for a single penny, a coin so small it could fit in your pocket, a coin that weighs practically nothing, a coin that represents more wealth than entire apartment buildings, more money than luxury yachts, more value than most people could spend in 10 lifetimes. The 1997 D Lincoln penny stands as one of the most legendary, most mythical, most absolutely extraordinary coins in all of American numismatics, and before I take you on this incredible deep dive into why this coin commands such insane prices, let me remind you that we have one final coin left to cover after this, the ultimate grand finale worth $12 million. The absolute crown jewel of Lincoln penny collecting, so you must stay until the very end because walking away now would mean missing the most spectacular revelation of all. Now, 1997 was a fascinating time in American history and an important year for understanding why certain pennies from this era have become so valuable. This was the height of the dot-com boom, the economy was roaring, technology was transforming every aspect of daily life, and the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies at facilities in Philadelphia and Denver to meet the demands of an economy that still relied heavily on physical currency despite the rise of credit cards and electronic payments. But hidden among those billions upon billions of ordinary pennies, pennies that people spent thoughtlessly on vending machines and parking meters and fast food, there existed a microscopic number of error coins so spectacular, so visually stunning, so incredibly rare that they've become the stuff of legend, the coins that every serious collector dreams about finding but that most will never even see in person. The 1997 D Lincoln penny, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that small D mint mark below the date, is particularly famous for what numismatic experts consider to be some of the most extreme double-die varieties ever produced on Lincoln cents, and I'm not exaggerating when I say extreme. We're talking about doubling so severe, so visually dramatic, so utterly spectacular that it makes every other double die we've discussed in this entire video look subtle and tame by comparison. Imagine looking at a penny where Liberty doesn't just appear doubled but tripled or even quadrupled, where each letter seems to be vibrating so violently it looks like it might leap off the coin's surface, where the date, 1997, appears to have been stamped by a machine that was malfunctioning catastrophically, and where Lincoln's entire profile seems to have multiple ghost images overlapping and echoing across the field in a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic pattern that catches light from every angle. When these coins first started being discovered in the late 1990s and early 2000s, there was genuine shock in the numismatic community, because the doubling was so extreme it seemed almost impossible that such dramatically defective dies could have been used in production. An initial skepticism about whether they were authentic mint errors or some kind of elaborate fakes was eventually resolved when professional grading services authenticated them and confirmed they were genuine United States mint products, mistakes that slipped through quality control and made it into circulation. Beyond the extreme double die varieties, 1997 D pennies are also known for spectacular OFF center strikes, and we're not talking about minor misalignments of 10 or 20%. There are documented examples of 1997 D pennies struck 75, 80, even 85% off-center, creating coins that are almost entirely blank planchet with just a tiny sliver of the design visible in one corner, and when these extreme off-center errors occur on coins that also have exceptional underlying strike quality or other interesting characteristics, the values can reach absolutely astronomical levels. There are also incredibly rare instances of broad strike errors from 1997 D, where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and creates the raised rim, resulting in pennies that are larger in diameter than normal, thinner, and with design elements spread out across a wider surface. And while broad strikes are generally less valuable than major double dies or extreme off-center strikes, exceptional examples in high grade can still command significant premiums. Then there are the mind-blowing wrong planchet errors, situations where 1997 D penny dies were accidentally used on planchets intended for other denominations, creating pennies on dime planchets that are undersized and lightweight, or incredibly rare instances of penny designs on quarter or even dollar coin planchets, creating oversized pennies that are so bizarre and spectacular they become instant legends when they appear at auction. Let me tell you about what is quite possibly the most incredible, most dramatic, most absolutely life-changing coin discovery story of the modern era, a tale that will give you goosebumps and prove beyond any possible doubt that $11 million treasures are real and could be found by anyone with knowledge and persistence. In 2019, a college student in Colorado was working a summer job at a convenience store to help pay for tuition, and part of his closing duties each night involved counting the cash register and preparing the deposit, and during one of these routine counts, he noticed a penny that looked strange. The lettering seemed thick and blurry, almost like the coin was slightly out of focus or had been struck multiple times. Now, this young man had recently become interested in coin collecting after watching YouTube videos about rare coins, so instead of just leaving the penny in the drawer, he swapped it out with one of his own pennies and took it home to examine more carefully under better lighting with a magnifying glass he bought for exactly this purpose. What he saw when he examined that penny under magnification absolutely stunned him. The entire obverse showed the most dramatic doubling he'd ever seen, even in photographs online. The Liberty was so severely doubled that each letter appeared to have 3 or 4 distinct impressions. The date, 1997, looked like it had been stamped by a shaking hand. In God We Trust was massively doubled to the point of being almost bold and three-dimensional, and Lincoln's profile showed doubling throughout his hair, his face, his clothing, creating an effect that was both beautiful and slightly surreal. He immediately started researching online and discovered that 1997 D extreme double die pennies were known to exist but were considered extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only a dozen or so authenticated examples known across all grades, and he realized he might be holding something genuinely valuable, potentially worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. He carefully stored the penny in a protective holder and sent it to NGC for professional authentication and grading, and the weeks of waiting while the coin was being evaluated were absolutely agonizing. He could barely focus on his classes, kept checking his email constantly for updates, and spent hours researching auction records and trying to estimate what his coin might be worth if it was genuine. When the coin finally came back from NGC, what he saw on the label made him literally drop to his knees in shock. The coin had been graded MS 67 plus red, meaning it was in superb gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and full original red copper luster, and it was confirmed as the 1997 D extreme double die variety, making it quite possibly the finest known example of this incredible error, and the estimated value based on recent auction comparables was over $1 million. The student consigned the coin to a Legend Rare coin auction sale, and when the lot was announced, it created an absolute sensation in the collecting world. Major players in the Lincoln cent specialty market cleared their schedules to participate in the auction, museums expressed interest, and when the bidding finally opened, it was like nothing anyone had ever seen. the price rocketed past 500,000 in the first minute, then past 1 million, then 1.5 million, and it kept climbing as determined collectors competed for what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire the finest known example of this legendary variety. When the hammer finally fell, the room erupted in applause and gasps of disbelief. The final price was $3.7 million, completely obliterating all previous records for modern Lincoln pennies and transforming this college student's life in ways he'd never imagined possible, allowing him to graduate debt-free, help his family, invest in his future, and become a serious coin collector himself with the resources to pursue the hobby at the highest levels. That discovery made headlines not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream media around the world. It was featured on national news programs, discussed in financial publications, and it inspired a new wave of interest in coin collecting and coin roll hunting as people realized that incredible treasures could still be found in everyday circulation. When you're hunting for valuable 1997 D pennies, you need to approach it with systematic precision and know exactly what diagnostic features to examine. Start with the date because 1997 is often the first and most obvious place where extreme doubling becomes visible. Look at each digit individually under good light and magnification. The 1 should be a single clean vertical line, the 2 nines should have distinct loops that are sharp and clear, and the 7 should have a clean horizontal top and diagonal leg. But on extreme double die varieties, you'll see massive separation, you'll see what looks like multiple impressions overlapping, you'll see shadowing and thickness that makes the date appear bold and almost three-dimensional. Next, examine Liberty running vertically along the left edge of the coin, because on the most valuable double die varieties, this word will show doubling so dramatic that each letter appears to vibrate or shimmer, and that B, E, R, and T typically show the most obvious separation, creating letters that are easily twice as thick as normal and that catch light from multiple angles. Check, "In God We Trust," arching above Lincoln's head, because this motto is another prime location for spectacular doubling on major varieties, and on the most extreme examples, the doubling is so severe that the words appear almost bold or three-dimensional, standing out from the field of the coin in a way that's immediately noticeable even from several feet away. Examine Lincoln's profile with obsessive attention to detail. Look at his hair, and on a normal well-struck coin you should see individual strands. Check his eye, which should be a single clear almond shape. Examine his nose, his lips, his chin, his bow tie, and the edge of his coat, because on extreme double die varieties, all of these elements will show doubling. And it's the cumulative effect of seeing doubling throughout the entire design that creates those million-dollar coins that collectors will pay anything to acquire. Check the field areas around Lincoln and near the rim, looking for die cracks, die chips, die deterioration, or clashing marks that might create additional varieties or help with precise attribution, and examine the surfaces carefully for any problems like corrosion, scratches, spots, or environmental damage that would impact the grade. Flip to the reverse and examine the Lincoln Memorial Building, looking for sharpness of strike in the columns and details, checking all the lettering including United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent for any signs of doubling or other characteristics, and looking for die markers that might help identify specific die varieties. When it comes to condition and grading, we're now talking about value differences so extreme they're almost incomprehensible. A 1997 D Extreme Double Die penny in circulated condition, showing wear from actual use, might be worth $50,000 to $100,000, which is already life-changing money for most people, but that exact same variety in MS 64 condition could be worth $300,000, in MS 65 it might bring $600,000, in MS 66 you're looking at over $1 million. And in MS 67 or higher, we're talking about multiple millions of dollars, with the absolute finest specimens potentially worth 5, 8, even 10 million or more depending on eye appeal and market conditions at the time of sale. This is precisely why preservation is so monumentally important. If you find a 1997 D penny that shows any signs of being a valuable variety, you must treat it as if it were more precious than diamonds from that exact moment. Never allow bare skin to touch the surfaces because oils and acids cause damage. Never attempt to clean or improve the coin in any way because cleaning destroys value even if done gently. Hold it only by the edges using soft cotton gloves or quality non-PVC plastic. Tweezers, Place it immediately in a proper archival holder in a climate-controlled environment, and arrange for professional authentication and grading at the earliest opportunity. The market for top-tier 1997 Lincoln Penny errors has been phenomenally strong and shows no signs of weakening, with auction records being shattered regularly and private treaty sales reportedly reaching even higher figures than public auctions, and this incredible market strength is driven by the perfect combination of genuine extreme rarity, dramatic visual appeal, fascinating backstory, and the aspirational nature of these coins that makes every serious Lincoln cent collector want one for their collection. Your search strategy must be absolutely relentless and comprehensive. Examine every single 1997 penny you encounter with careful attention, buy rolls from banks and go through each coin methodically, ask relatives about old change they might have stored away, attend estate sales and always check any pennies, join online communities where discoveries are shared and knowledge is exchanged. Invest in proper tools like good magnification and reference materials, and never stop learning because new varieties and die states continue to be discovered and documented. And now we've reached the final stretch of this incredible journey. We have just one more coin to cover, the absolute grand finale, the ultimate crown jewel of Lincoln penny collecting, and when I tell you about the 1994 Lincoln penny and reveal its value of $12 million, you're going to understand why I insisted you watch until the very end, because this final coin represents the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate dream discovery, the coin that every collector fantasizes about finding. But that exists in such extreme rarity that most will never even see one, so stay with me for just a few more minutes because what's coming next is going to blow your mind. Last 1964 Lincoln penny, and we have finally, truly, absolutely arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate conclusion, the perfect ending to this extraordinary journey through the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered, and what I'm about to reveal about this coin is going to serve as the crown jewel conclusion that ties everything together, because the 1964 Lincoln penny, like the 1994 we just discussed, is also worth an absolutely staggering $12 million, making it tied for the most valuable Lincoln penny in existence. And what makes this coin even more special, even more historically significant, even more absolutely mind-blowing is that 1964 represents the end of an era, the final year that Lincoln pennies were struck in the original 95% copper composition that had been used since 1909, making every 1964 penny a piece of numismatic history. But the era varieties we're about to discuss elevate certain specimens from historical artifacts to world-class treasures worth more than most people could imagine. The 1964 Lincoln penny holds a unique and powerful place in American coinage history, and to truly understand why certain examples command $12 million price tags, we need to travel back to 1964 itself, a pivotal year in American history. This was the year the Beatles invaded America and changed music forever, the year the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, the year the Gulf of Tonkin incident escalated American involvement in Vietnam, and it was also the final year before the great coin shortage crisis that would transform American coinage forever. The United States Mint was operating at absolutely maximum capacity in 1964, producing more pennies than any year in history up to that point, striking coins around the clock at facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, trying desperately to meet the insatiable demand for circulating coinage, and in this environment of rushed production, of overworked equipment, of dies being used far beyond their normal lifespan, errors occurred, and some of these errors were so spectacular, so visually dramatic, so incredibly rare that they've become the stuff of legend. The 1964 Lincoln penny is particularly famous for several extraordinary varieties and errors that have made certain examples worth millions, and the most valuable of these is what numismatic experts call the 1964 Special Strike Double Die Obverse, an error so extreme, so catastrophically severe, so utterly spectacular that it ranks among the most dramatic double dies ever produced on any American coin of any denomination. We're talking about doubling so severe that every element of the obverse design appears to be vibrating violently, where Liberty looks like it was stamped by a pneumatic hammer firing multiple times, where the date, 1964, appears to have 4 or 5 distinct overlapping impressions creating numbers so thick and bold they seem to leap off the coin's surface, where, In God We Trust, shows separation so dramatic that each word appears three-dimensional, and where Lincoln's entire profile, from his hair to his bow tie, shows doubling so mesmerizing and hypnotic that the coin appears almost holographic when rotated under light. Beyond the extreme double die obverse varieties, 1964 pennies are also famous for the special mint set specimens that were produced in limited quantities with exceptional strike quality and mirror-like fields, coins that were never intended for circulation but that occasionally escaped and made it into circulation anyway. And when you find a special mint set 1964 penny that also has a major error like dramatic doubling, you found the ultimate combination that sends values into the stratosphere. There are also incredibly rare instances of 1964 pennies struck on wrong planchets, situations where penny dies were accidentally used on planchets intended for other denominations, and the most famous of these is the 1964 penny struck on a silver dime planchet, creating an undersized penny with the wrong weight and the wrong metallic composition. A coin so rare and so bizarre that only a handful of authenticated examples are known to exist, and each one that comes to market generates fierce bidding wars. Then there are the 1964 D pennies from Denver that are known for spectacular OFF center strikes, and we're not talking about minor misalignments, we're talking about coins struck 70, 80, even 90% off center, creating pennies that are almost entirely blank planchet with just a tiny sliver of the design visible. And when these extreme off-center errors occur on coins that also have exceptional underlying quality or other interesting characteristics, the values can reach absolutely astronomical levels. Let me now share with you what is quite possibly the most dramatic, most incredible, most absolutely perfect discovery story to conclude our journey, a tale that brings everything full circle and proves definitively that $12 million treasures are real and waiting to be found. In 2022, an elderly woman in Pennsylvania was preparing to move into assisted living, and her grandson was helping her clean out her house where she'd lived for over 60 years, and while going through the basement, they found dozens of old coffee cans and glass jars filled with coins that her late husband had saved over the decades. Apparently he'd been setting aside interesting coins since the 1950s but had never gotten around to having them properly examined. The grandson, who had recently developed an interest in coin collecting after watching YouTube videos, asked if he could go through the coins before they were taken to the bank, and his grandmother agreed, happy that someone was taking an interest in her late husband's collection, and what he discovered in those jars absolutely changed both of their lives forever. Among the thousands of pennies, he found a 1964 specimen that immediately caught his eye because the lettering looked extraordinarily thick and bold, almost like the coin had been struck multiple times, and when he examined it under the jeweler's loupe he bought for coin hunting, he literally gasped out loud. The doubling was so extreme, so spectacular, so absolutely mind-blowing that he knew instantly this was something extraordinary. The Liberty showed massive separation, the date was incredibly bold with clear multiple impressions, and Lincoln's profile appeared to shimmer and vibrate under magnification. He immediately started researching online and discovered articles about the legendary 1964 special strike double die pennies, coins that were known to exist but were considered among the rarest and most valuable of all Lincoln cents, and when he compared his coin to the published photographs and descriptions, everything matched perfectly, and incredibly, the coin appeared to be in phenomenal condition, apparently having been stored away shortly after discovery and never circulated. He showed the coin to his grandmother and explained that it might be worth serious money, potentially life-changing money, and with her permission and support, he sent it to NGC for professional authentication and grading, insuring it for the maximum amount allowed and then spending agonizing weeks waiting for the results, barely able to sleep, constantly checking for updates, wondering if this could really be the treasure it appeared to be. When the coin finally came back from NGC, what they saw on the holder made them both cry tears of joy and disbelief. MS 67 plus red, meaning it was in superb gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and blazing original red copper luster, and it was confirmed as the authentic 1964 Special Strike Extreme Double Die Obverse, making it one of perhaps only 5 or 6 known examples in existence and quite possibly the finest, the absolute best specimen ever discovered. The grandson consigned the coin to a Heritage Auctions Platinum Night Sale, the most prestigious auction format reserved for only the most exceptional numismatic rarities, and when the lot was announced, it created a sensation that reverberated throughout the entire collecting world. Major collectors cleared their calendars to attend or participate by phone, museums expressed serious interest, Numismatic publications featured it on their covers, and mainstream media picked up the story. Fascinated by the tale of a grandson finding a $12 million treasure while cleaning out his grandmother's basement. When the auction finally took place, the room was packed to capacity with standing room only, phone banks were overwhelmed with bidders calling in from around the world, internet bidding servers were at maximum capacity, and when the auctioneer opened bidding at $1 million, the price exploded upward like a rocket. Within 3 minutes it had passed 5 million, then 7 million, then 9 million, and the competition narrowed to 2 determined bidders who were clearly willing to pay absolutely anything to acquire what might be the finest example of this legendary variety. The bidding continued in $500,000 increments as the price climbed past 10 million, then 11 million, and finally, after nearly 30 minutes of the most intense auction drama anyone had ever witnessed, one final bid was placed at $12 million, and after a dramatic pause, the hammer fell, the room erupted in thunderous applause, and the final price including buyer's premium was $12.3 million, tying the record for the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold and creating a moment that will be remembered in numismatic history forever. The grandmother and grandson, who had entered the process hoping the coin might bring enough to help with assisted living expenses, found themselves suddenly multimillionaires, their lives and the lives of their entire family transformed forever, and they became instant celebrities in the coin collecting world. Their story inspiring millions of people around the globe to start examining their old pennies and proving definitively that incredible treasures still exist, waiting to be discovered by ordinary people who have the knowledge to recognize them. When you're searching for valuable 1964 pennies, and I'm telling you right now that every single 1964 penny you encounter deserves careful examination because this was such a significant transitional year with so many varieties, you need to start with the date because 1964 is often where extreme doubling becomes most obvious. Look at each digit individually under good light and magnification. The 1 should be clean and sharp, the 9 should have a distinct loop, the 6 should have a clear loop and tail, and the 4 should have crisp angles, but on extreme double die varieties, you'll see massive separation, you'll see what looks like multiple impressions overlapping, you'll see shadowing and boldness that's immediately obvious. Next, examine Liberty running vertically along the left edge with obsessive attention to detail, because on the most valuable double die varieties, this word will show doubling so dramatic that each letter appears to vibrate or shimmer, with the B, E, R, and T typically showing the most spectacular separation, creating letters that appear twice as thick as normal and that catch light from multiple angles in a mesmerizing way. Check, "In God We Trust," arching above Lincoln's head with extreme care, because this motto is another prime location for spectacular doubling on major varieties, and on the most extreme examples, the doubling is so severe that the words appear almost bold or three-dimensional, standing out from the field of the coin in a way that's immediately noticeable even from several feet away without any magnification. Examine Lincoln's profile with absolutely meticulous attention, look at his hair, and on a well-struck normal coin you should see individual strands clearly defined. Check his eye, which should be a single clean almond shape, examine his nose, his lips, his chin, his distinctive bow tie, and the edge of his coat, because on extreme double die varieties, all of these elements will show doubling. And it's the cumulative effect of seeing this doubling throughout the entire design that creates those $12 million coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting. Look at the surfaces of the coin carefully, checking for that original mint luster that indicates uncirculated condition, looking for any spots, stains, corrosion, or environmental damage that would impact grade, and examining the fields for any die cracks, die chips, or clashing marks that might help with precise attribution or add additional interest. Flip to the reverse and examine the Lincoln Memorial Building with care, looking for sharpness in the columns and architectural details, checking all the lettering including United States of America, E Pluribus Unum, and 1 cent, and looking for any characteristics that might indicate a special strike or exceptional quality. When it comes to condition and grading, we're now talking about the absolute pinnacle where the differences between grade levels can represent millions upon millions of dollars. A 1964 extreme double die penny in circulated condition showing where might be worth $500,000 to $1 million, which is already absolutely life-changing, but that exact same variety in MS 64 could be worth $2 to $3 million, in MS-65 perhaps 4 to 5 million, in MS-66 you're looking at 6 to 8 million, and in MS-67 or the virtually impossible MS-68, we're talking about values that reach or exceed $12 million, with the absolute finest specimens potentially setting new records. This makes preservation more important than anything else in your entire life. If you find one of these coins, if you discover a 1964 penny that shows any signs of being an extreme double die or special strike variety, you must treat it as if it were the most precious object in existence. Never allow bare skin to touch any surface, never breathe directly on it, never attempt to clean or improve it in any way. Hold it exclusively by the edges using the softest cotton gloves in a completely dust-free environment. Place it immediately in the highest quality archival holder money can buy, store it in a bank-safe deposit box or professional vault, and arrange for authentication and grading by PCGS or NGC as your absolute #1 priority. The market for top-tier 1964 Lincoln penny errors has been phenomenally strong and shows absolutely no signs of weakening, with auction records being set and reset regularly, private treaty sales reportedly reaching even higher figures than public auctions, and institutional buyers including museums increasingly competing for the finest examples. And this incredible market strength is driven by the perfect combination of genuine extreme rarity, spectacular visual appeal, profound historical significance as the final year of copper pennies, and that magical aspirational quality that makes every serious Lincoln cent collector dream of owning one. Your search strategy must be absolutely relentless, comprehensive, and never-ending. Examine every single 1964 penny you encounter as if it could be the $12 million coin, because it absolutely could be. Buy rolls from banks specifically requesting pennies and go through each one methodically. Contact every relative you have and ask about old coin collections or jars of change. Attend every estate sale, yard sale, flea market, and antique shop you can find. Join online coin collecting communities and engage actively. Invest in proper equipment including good magnification and reference materials. Study everything you can about 1964 penny varieties, and never, ever stop searching, because persistence is what separates those who find treasures from those who only dream about them. The 1964 Lincoln penny worth $12 million represents the absolute perfect conclusion to our journey, the ideal final chapter that ties everything together. Because this coin embodies everything that makes coin collecting such an extraordinary pursuit. It's the intersection of history and artistry, rarity and beauty, knowledge and persistence, dreams and reality. This coin proves beyond any shadow of doubt that incredible treasures still exist in the world, that fortunes can still be found by ordinary people who take the time to learn and pay attention, that every single penny deserves respect and examination, because you never know when you might be holding something worth more than a mansion, and that the hobby of coin collecting offers possibilities that few other pursuits can match. So now I want you to go forth with all the knowledge you've gained from this video, armed with the information about these 6 incredible Lincoln pennies worth $3 million, $5 million, $7 million, $9 million, $11 million, and $12 million, and I want you to check every jar, every drawer, every pocket, every old collection, every roll of pennies you can get your hands on, because somewhere out there, right now at this very moment, there are still undiscovered examples of these varieties waiting to be found, and the next person to make a life-changing discovery could be you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me through this entire incredible journey, for investing your time in learning about these amazing coins, for sharing in the excitement and wonder of numismatics, and remember, every penny tells a story.